You've been told your entire life that carbs make you fat. Bread, rice, fruit, sugar. But what if I told you carbs are not the real problem? There's a hidden hormone inside your body. And if it's out of control, you can diet harder, eat less, exercise more, and still not lose fat. Today, I'm going to show you the real reason your body is holding on to fat, the hormone blocking fat burning, and how to fix it using food you already eat. For decades, you've been told a simple story: carbs make you fat, bread is the enemy, rice is the problem, sugar is the villain, and if you just cut carbs hard enough, long enough, your body will finally give in and burn the fat you've been fighting to lose. It sounds logical, it feels convincing, but what if that story is incomplete? And that missing piece is the reason so many people stay stuck no matter how hard they try. Because the truth is far more unsettling. Your body doesn't decide to store or burn fat based on carbs alone. It follows signals, hormonal signals. And the most powerful one controlling your fat storage right now is insulin. Insulin is not some obscure chemical buried in a textbook. It is a master regulator, a survival hormone. Every time you eat, especially foods that raise your blood sugar, insulin rises in response. Its job is to move glucose out of your bloodstream and into your cells where it can be used or stored. That's normal. That's necessary. Without insulin, your body couldn't function. But here's where things begin to break down. In a healthy system, insulin rises when you eat, then falls when you stop. This rise and fall rhythm allows your body to switch between burning glucose and burning fat. But in today's environment, that rhythm is gone, replaced by constant stimulation, constant eating, constant spikes. And when insulin stays elevated for too long, something profound happens inside your body. Fat burning shuts off, not slows down, not becomes less efficient, it stops. Because insulin doesn't just help store energy, it actively blocks your body from accessing stored fat. Scientifically, high insulin levels inhibit lipolysis, the process where fat cells release stored fat to be used as fuel. At the same time, it stimulates lipogenesis, the creation and storage of new fat. In other words, when insulin is high, your body is being told very clearly, store energy, do not burn it. Now think about what that means for someone trying to lose weight. You could be eating less, you could be exercising more, you could be doing everything right according to traditional advice. But if your insulin is constantly elevated, your body is biologically locked in fat storage mode. It's like pressing the gas pedal and the brake at the same time. Effort increases, but movement doesn't happen. And this is exactly what millions of people experience: the frustration of doing everything they were told, yet seeing no real progress. The quiet belief that maybe it's a lack of discipline, maybe it's a slow metabolism, but the reality is much more mechanical than personal. The system itself is being driven by the wrong signal. What keeps insulin elevated isn't just carbs, it's frequency, it's patterns, it's the modern way of eating: breakfast at 8, snack at 10, lunch at 1, snack at 4, dinner at 8, maybe something sweet before bed. Each time you eat, insulin rises, and if you never give it time to fall, your body never gets the signal to switch into fat burning mode. Research shows that in individuals with frequent eating patterns, insulin levels can remain elevated for the majority of the day, leaving almost no window for fat oxidation to occur. And then there's insulin resistance, a condition that doesn't happen overnight, but builds slowly, quietly, over years of constant stimulation. Your cells become less responsive to insulin's signal, so your body compensates by producing more of it. Higher and higher levels, just to achieve the same effect. Studies have shown that insulin-resistant individuals often have chronically elevated insulin levels even when fasting, meaning their bodies are locked in fat storage mode almost all the time. This is why two people can eat the same number of calories and have completely different outcomes. Because calories don't control fat storage directly, hormones do, and insulin sits at the center of that control system. It also explains something else that feels deeply familiar to many people: the cycle of hunger and cravings. When insulin spikes rapidly, blood sugar can drop just as quickly, triggering hunger signals even when your body has more than enough stored energy. You're not actually low on fuel, you're just unable to access it. So you eat again. Insulin rises again, and the cycle repeats. This isn't a failure of willpower, it's a biological loop, and the longer it continues, the harder it becomes to break. Because your body adapts, it becomes efficient at storing fat, resistant to releasing it, and dependent on frequent energy intake. Energy crashes become normal, cravings become constant, and fat loss feels almost impossible. But once you understand the mechanism, something shifts. Because now the problem is no longer vague or mysterious, it becomes specific, measurable, controllable. The goal is not to fear food, it's not to eliminate carbs completely, it's to manage the signal that controls what your body does with the food you eat. Lower the frequency of insulin spikes and you create space for it to fall. Allow it to fall and you unlock fat burning. Stabilize it over time, and your body regains the ability to switch between fuel sources the way it was designed to. This is why strategies like reducing snacking, focusing on whole foods, and spacing meals apart are so powerful. Not because they magically reduce calories, but because they change the hormonal environment. They give your body the signal it has been missing for years. It's safe to burn stored energy again. And when that happens, something almost unexpected begins to occur. Hunger stabilizes, energy levels rise, cravings fade, fat loss becomes less of a battle and more of a process your body participates in willingly. So the next time you hear that carbs are the sole reason for weight gain, remember this. Carbs are just one part of a much larger system. The real control lies in the hormone that responds to them, the hormone that decides whether you store fat or burn it, the hormone that, when misunderstood, can keep you stuck no matter how hard you try. It's not just about what you eat, it's about what your body is being told to do with it, and until that signal changes, nothing else truly will. You wake up determined. Today will be different. You'll eat less, move more, stay disciplined, and finally see the fat start to disappear. You've done this before, counted calories, tracked every bite, pushed through hunger, forced yourself to exercise even when your body felt drained, and yet the scale barely moves, or worse, it moves for a few days, then stops. And in that silence, a question starts to grow louder. Why is this not working? Because what you've been told about fat loss is only half the story. You've been taught to focus on calories, as if your body is a simple math equation. Eat less than you burn and the fat will vanish. But your body is not a calculator. It is a complex hormonal system, constantly adapting, constantly protecting you, constantly responding to signals you don't even realize you're sending. And one of those signals is quietly overriding everything else you're doing. That signal is insulin. Every time you eat, insulin rises. It's supposed to. It helps manage blood sugar and store energy. But when insulin is elevated too often, something changes deep inside your metabolism. Your body shifts its priority, it stops focusing on burning fat and starts focusing on storing it. And this shift doesn't care how motivated you are. It doesn't care how hard you train. It only follows the signal. Research has shown that when insulin levels remain high, fat oxidation is significantly reduced. That means your body is physically blocked from accessing the fat you're trying so hard to lose. You are literally carrying energy on your body that you cannot use. And so, even while dieting, even while restricting calories, your body perceives a shortage. It senses that it cannot access stored fuel, and it responds the only way it knows how. It slows you down. Your metabolism adapts. Studies on calorie restriction consistently show that prolonged dieting can reduce metabolic rate, sometimes by hundreds of calories per day. Your body becomes more efficient, burning fewer calories to protect itself. Hormones that regulate hunger begin to shift. Ghrelin, the hunger hormone, rises. Leptin, the hormone that signals fullness, drops. You feel hungrier, less satisfied, and more tired all at the same time. And still, the fat doesn't come off the way you expected. This is not a failure of effort, it's a biological defense mechanism. Because from your body's perspective, it's not trying to help you lose weight, it's trying to keep you alive. And when it detects what it interprets as a threat, reduced calorie intake combined with limited access to stored energy, it goes into preservation mode. It conserves fuel. It increases hunger. It reduces unnecessary movement. Even your subconscious activity, like fidgeting or spontaneous motion, can decrease without you noticing. Every system shifts to protect energy, and all of this is happening while insulin remains elevated in the background, quietly preventing fat from being used as fuel. This is why so many people experience the same painful cycle. They start a diet. They see quick results in the beginning, often from water loss and glycogen depletion. That early success feels encouraging, but then progress slows, hunger increases, energy drops, cravings intensify, and eventually the pressure becomes too much. The diet breaks, weight comes back, sometimes more than before, and the cycle begins again. This pattern has been observed repeatedly in long-term studies. Weight regain after dieting is not the exception. It is the norm. And it's not because people lack discipline. It's because the underlying hormonal environment was never addressed. Insulin resistance makes this even more challenging. In this state, your body requires higher levels of insulin to manage the same amount of glucose. This means insulin stays elevated longer, even between meals. Research has shown that individuals with insulin resistance often have difficulty losing fat despite following calorie-restricted diets. Their bodies are essentially locked in a state where fat storage is prioritized over fat burning, and then there's the psychological toll, the quiet frustration of doing everything right and seeing no results, the internal dialogue that starts to turn against you. Maybe I'm just not trying hard enough, maybe I don't have enough willpower, maybe something is wrong with me, but the truth is your body is responding exactly as it was designed to respond under those conditions. It's not broken, it's following instructions. The problem is those instructions are coming from a hormonal signal that has been chronically elevated for too long. And once you see this, something begins to shift because now the focus changes. It's no longer just about reducing calories. It's about changing the signal. It's about creating an internal environment where your body is allowed to access the energy it has already stored. When insulin levels are lowered, even temporarily, fat cells begin to release stored energy. Lipolysis increases. Fatty acids enter the bloodstream and can be used by muscles and other tissues for fuel. Your body no longer needs to rely solely on incoming food for energy. Hunger begins to stabilize because the energy supply becomes more consistent. You're no longer running on a constant cycle of spikes and crashes. This is why approaches that focus on meal timing, reducing snacking, and stabilizing blood sugar can be so effective. Not because they are extreme, but because they address the root cause. They allow insulin to fall. And when insulin falls, fat burning can begin. It also explains why simply eating less without changing the hormonal environment often leads to frustration. Because you are asking your body to do something it is not currently capable of doing. You are asking it to burn fat while the signal to store fat is still active. And until that signal changes, the outcome rarely does. The idea that fat loss is purely about calories is appealing because it's simple. But simplicity doesn't always reflect reality. And the reality is that your body is governed by systems that are far more complex, far more adaptive, and far more protective than a simple equation. So if you've been dieting, exercising, pushing yourself harder and harder without seeing the results you expected, understand this. The missing piece is not more effort. It's a different approach, one that works with your biology instead of against it. One that recognizes the role of hormones, especially insulin, in determining whether your body stores fat or burns it. Because once that signal is corrected, once insulin is brought back into balance, something remarkable happens. The resistance fades, the constant hunger quiets, energy becomes more stable, and fat loss, for the first time in a long time, begins to feel possible again. Not because you're trying harder, but because your body is finally working with you instead of against you. There is a moment, often overlooked, where everything you believe about fat loss quietly begins to fall apart. It's the moment you realize that two people can eat the same food, the same calories, follow the same plan, and walk away with completely different bodies. One loses fat effortlessly, the other stays stuck, frustrated, exhausted, questioning everything. And that's where the truth begins to surface. Fat loss is not just about how much you eat, it's about what your body is told to do with what you eat. Because beneath every meal, every calorie, every bite, there is a conversation happening inside your body, a biochemical dialogue controlled by hormones. And at the center of that conversation is insulin, a signal so powerful that it can determine whether your body stores fat or burns it. Science has known this for decades, but it's often ignored in mainstream advice because it complicates a simple message. When insulin levels rise, your body shifts into storage mode. This is not a theory. It's a well-documented physiological response. Insulin activates enzymes like lipoprotein lipase in fat tissue, encouraging fat storage while simultaneously inhibiting hormone-sensitive lipase, the enzyme responsible for breaking down stored fat. In simple terms, when insulin is high, fat is being locked away and the door to burning it is closed. Now imagine trying to lose weight under those conditions. You're reducing calories, pushing your body to create an energy deficit, but at the same time, your hormonal environment is preventing access to stored fuel. So where does your body get the energy it needs? It compensates, it slows down, it reduces output, it conserves, because from a biological standpoint, it has no choice. This is why metabolic slowdown is not just a possibility, it's an expected response. Studies on adaptive thermogenesis show that when calorie intake drops, the body doesn't simply burn stored fat at a steady rate. It adjusts. Resting metabolic rate decreases. Non-essential functions are dialed back. Even thyroid hormone activity can shift, reducing energy expenditure further. The body becomes more efficient, not because it wants to help you lose weight, but because it's trying to survive what it perceives as a shortage. And here's where the deeper problem reveals itself. If insulin remains elevated during this process, your body is essentially being told two conflicting things at the same time. On one hand, there is less incoming energy. On the other hand, there is restricted access to stored energy. It's like being surrounded by food but unable to eat it. The result is a state of internal tension, low energy availability combined with blocked fat utilization. This is where fatigue begins to creep in. Not just physical tiredness, but a deeper, more persistent exhaustion. The kind that makes simple tasks feel harder. The kind that drains motivation, and it's not in your head. It's biochemical. Your cells are struggling to access fuel efficiently, and your body responds by conserving what little energy it can use. At the same time, hunger signals intensify. Ghrelin levels rise, pushing you to seek food. Leptin levels drop, reducing your sense of fullness and satisfaction. This hormonal shift has been observed in multiple long-term studies, including those tracking individuals after significant weight loss. Even years later, these hunger signals can remain elevated, creating a constant internal pressure to eat. And yet, despite eating less, despite feeling hungrier, despite pushing through fatigue, fat loss often stalls. This is the paradox that confuses so many people, because logically, it doesn't make sense. If you're in a calorie deficit, the fat should come off, but biology is not driven by logic alone. It's driven by survival mechanisms that have been shaped over thousands of years. Your body does not understand dieting as a choice. It interprets it as a potential threat. And when that threat is combined with a hormonal environment that favors fat storage, the response becomes even stronger. The body holds on tighter. It resists change. It prioritizes preservation over transformation. This is why the concept of a calorie is a calorie falls short, because it ignores the hormonal impact of those calories. It ignores how different foods, different eating patterns, and different metabolic states influence insulin levels and, in turn, fat storage. It treats the body as a static system when in reality it is dynamic, responsive, and constantly adapting. Research comparing different dietary approaches has shown that even when calories are matched, variations in insulin response can lead to different outcomes in fat loss and metabolic health. This doesn't mean calories don't matter, but it does mean they are not the whole story. The hormonal context in which those calories are consumed plays a critical role in determining what happens next. And when insulin is chronically elevated, that context is skewed towards storage. But when insulin is lowered, even temporarily, something remarkable begins to happen. The biochemical environment shifts. Hormone-sensitive lipase becomes active again. Fat cells begin to release stored fatty acids into the bloodstream. The body gains access to a stable, consistent source of energy that doesn't rely on constant food intake. This changes everything. Energy levels become more stable because they are no longer tied to frequent spikes and crashes in blood sugar. Hunger becomes more manageable because the body is no longer in a state of perceived scarcity. And fat loss becomes more consistent because the mechanism that was blocking it has been removed. This is the concept of metabolic flexibility, the ability to switch between burning glucose and burning fat depending on availability. In a healthy system, this flexibility is natural. But in a system dominated by chronically high insulin, that flexibility is lost. The body becomes dependent on frequent carbohydrate intake for energy, and fat burning becomes suppressed. Restoring that flexibility is not about extreme restriction. It's about restoring balance. It's about creating conditions where insulin can rise when needed and fall when not. It's about giving your body the opportunity to access the energy it has already stored. And once that happens, the entire experience of fat loss begins to change. It no longer feels like a constant battle against hunger and fatigue. It becomes a process that your body supports rather than resists. So when you look at your journey, when you think about the effort you've put in, the diets you've tried, the frustration you've felt, understand this. The issue was never just about how much you were eating. It was about the signals controlling what your body did with that energy. Because in the end, fat loss is not just a matter of subtraction, it's a matter of communication. And insulin is one of the most powerful messages your body will ever receive. Change that message and you change the outcome. Ignore it, and no matter how hard you try, your body will continue to follow the instructions it's been given.